Pat McAfee. He's back in the headlines because he's won the battle against Norby Williamson. The executive is out after nearly 40 years with ESPN, and you have Burke Magnus, who sent a memo out, a letter in an email to ESPN staffers saying that he wanted to reach out with some important news. Norby Williamson will be leaving the company today. Nearly 40 years of dedicated service. During Norby's career, he made significant contributions across many important roles with content. And through his steadfast commitment and attention to detail, Norby has had a lasting impact on the sports fans' experience. His wide-ranging influence includes SportsCenter, breaking news coverage, immense creativity within event and studio productions, and diverse storytelling across various ESPN platforms. Chad, here's what it came down to. ESPN leadership, Burke Magnus, the reports were he and Williamson did not see eye to eye on the direction that ESPN is going in the future. No kidding. Based on what they've done with McAfee and how McAfee has called out Norby Williamson, not once, not twice, but at least 3 times, and has doubled down, tripled down, and now sees the guy that he says was sabotaging his show, called him a rat, is now out the door, and McAfee continues to have the steam and the power moving forward.
I think there's a big lesson here in this story, and I think it carries over in a lot of ways. And I brought this up the first time that Pat McAfee called out Norby Williamson so publicly. Pat McAfee's more important to ESPN than Norby Williamson. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that, even with all of his time at ESPN, even though he was someone who helped in the creation of SportsCenter and all of those things. Right now, Pat McAfee is more important to the future and the present of ESPN than Norby Williamson. And if you are going to go about your business in a way that you're going to be petty because you don't like someone that your boss hired and you're going to try to sabotage them, which Pat McAfee is smart enough to know that he knew what was going on if he's going to say it. To say it publicly, he had pretty damn good evidence, compelling evidence, that what he was saying was true about Norby Williamson and his effort to sabotage the show by leaking ratings information, by talking bad about Pat McAfee, and they had a history also where he disrespected McAfee and made him wait for an hour and got into the whole history of that. But he's more important than Norby Williamson. So Norby Williamson leaves. Pat McAfee stays. I really think it's as simple as that. The next part of this, Hutton, you said, he won the battle. I think the battles were being waged. He won the war. He's gone, McAfee stays, and now he's got one less headache at ESPN.
Well, I'm taking McAfee for his word when he says this is just the start. We barely scratched the surface on how I feel.
Yeah,
I took it as a battle.
And that was a battle. I'm saying this is the war. The war is over. He waged a battle. He could have continued to wage battles. And now the war is over because Norby's out and Pat McAfee stays. I want to hear from Norby Williamson now. He's not at ESPN. He's not going to be under contract. I don't know who's going to interview him, if it's going to be in a written publication or if it's going to be on camera or whatever it is. I'd love to hear from Norby Williamson
the New York Post,
on all of this.
They seem
to get all the scoop.
Yeah, which was where the ratings came out, the numbers, the streaming numbers and more, because it was the timing of it that was peculiar. Because ESPN had a press release the following morning, already written. The quotes were already in the press release for McAfee and everyone above him, praising him and the online numbers and the YouTube stream that they wanted to present as the direction the company was headed, right?
Yeah, and
the day before, literally 12 hours prior, you have the story in the New York Post about how McAfee's not reaching the top of the line numbers that was expected by him, not even a year in, but just literally months in, 4 or 5 months into on the job.
And they could have been negotiating the him parting ways ever since McAfee called him out publicly.
So.
It may have been happening before that. Who knows? McAfee may have done that knowing that he was going to be on his way out. And part of the negotiated settlement or buyout or whatever they did for Norby Williamson may include an NDA where he's not going to do any interviews and talk about it. So that's also a possibility in all this. But if I'm Norby Williamson and I feel like what's being said about me is not true, that I did not try to sabotage the show, even if I had creative differences with the show or whatever, I'd want that story out there. I mean, I'd want to talk to someone about it.
Long ago.
Yeah. And now, again, like if your boss is saying you can't speak, right, while you're still employed there, like don't respond to it, I understand being quiet. But now that he's not there, if I thought lies were being said about me, I would not sign the NDA. Now, he may have had to sign it to get a big check to walk away also. I don't know what all went down. But, again, his silence, Hutton, leads me to believe that McAfee is 1,000% correct and that he has good information that he was sabotaging his show. Because he's not even defending himself on it.
Yeah, but again, if they said, pipe down, keep quiet, which they did.
I'm sure they did at the time.
McAfee kept talking, and Williamson never did.
Yeah, there should be nothing stopping him now that he's no longer an employee, except unless he signed an NDA.
Right, and his contract, according to the Post, went through 2027, which is the year that the Super Bowl returns to ABC for the first time since 2006. So they had that matched up, and, of course, he's out early with the departure. I wonder what McAfee thinks about all this behind the scenes.
I wonder if he says something about it on his show.
Because Burke Magnus promoted Williamson last year prior to all this drama.
Yeah. I think they're going to look, knowing McAfee and the way him and his crew do things, I feel like they might make a joke about it. Like they may do something without referencing him, pouring one out for a fallen comrade or something, or like a celebration.
I mean,
on the show.
There's no telling.
I feel like he might actually address it in some way.
Well, and the promotion last year, and then knowing the report that he and Burke Magnus don't see eye to eye on the direction of ESPN, and the power of Pat McAfee. Stephen A. Smith is, of course, wanting to be the highest paid person at ESPN. He's got the clout, too, where he can speak his mind. I mean, Scott Van Pelt comes to mind, Chad. There's not many others.
No, there's not. They've gotten rid of a lot of the high-profile people.
Yeah, but knowing the power of the personalities, like those three can drive the direction of ESPN. And they're no discipline. There's no discipline for it, speaking out against someone that's supposed to be overseeing the show.
Well, and the rest of them are all sports-specific. I feel like if you're trying to go through the list of biggest high-profile celebrities, contributors at ESPN. You ran through them there. Stephen A. Smith, Pat McAfee at the top, Scott Van Pelt's another one I would say. But outside of that, I think you have a lot of Tony Kornheiser and Wilbon, I guess. I'd put in that also.
But I don't think of them in the same light anymore.
I don't think of them at all in the same way. And that show was pretty revolutionary back in the early to mid-aughts when it started with Pardon the Interruption. But I don't think about them as much anymore either. And everything else is I think about like Kirk Herbstreit. I think of people who are attached to a sport. Yep. They are the voice of the sport, and they're an ESPN employee. I mean, other than the 3 or 4 we just referenced, there's not many left.
And McAfee said that this was just a warning shot. Just a warning shot. Chad, the women's Final Four tips off this evening. You've got the official schedule is UConn and NC State at 7 o'clock Eastern, followed by Iowa and UConn. Iowa and UConn at 9:30 Eastern. So it's NC State and South Carolina, and Iowa, UConn in the doubleheader. In prime time, of course, Caitlin Clark. The men's Final Four, Purdue and NC State at 6:10 Eastern, followed by UConn and Bama at 8:45 on Saturday evening. One of these batches of games far more interesting than the other?
No doubt, and it's the ladies. It's appointment viewing tonight for me. Maybe not so much South Carolina as an 11.5-point favorite against NC State tonight, but UConn, Iowa, which is set to tip at 8:30 Central Time, around there. I'm all in. I'm going to be watching it live, and I cannot wait to watch it. I can't say the same about the men's semifinal games. Now, if it is UConn and Purdue, which we want on this show, because those are the 2 best teams remaining, I'm all in to that national championship game if it's those 2 teams. But NC State and Purdue and UConn, Bama just does not move the needle much for me the way Caitlin Clark in Iowa versus the standard bearer in all of women's basketball, Gino Auriemma and UConn and Paige Beckers, who may be the second best player in women's college basketball.
And
right
the most
now.
hyped recruit maybe ever.
And that's and Hutton, I'm so excited about it. It forced me to do something I've never done before in my life. I placed a wager on women's basketball for the first time ever. So if you'd like to trail me or fade me, whatever you'd like to do, I'm going South Carolina minus 11.5, and I'm picking UConn money line in the upset as a 3-point underdog against Caitlin Clark in Iowa. And got some pretty good money rolling in if that happens, because Iowa is the favorite. But here's what I want to happen. Okay, that's where my money is. Here's where my mouth is. I want Iowa to win because I want Caitlin Clark versus South Carolina in the championship game. I respectfully disagree with Clay, who we had on earlier this week. I do think that it matters the opponent in that championship game. It needs to be South Carolina. That is a terrific storyline.
Yes.
South Carolina undefeated, trying to cap off an undefeated season, playing the biggest phenom in the history of the sport in Caitlin Clark. In Caitlin Clark's final game as a college player, playing for the national championship. I mean, it's bird magic type drama, I feel like, for a national championship game, if it's those two teams. Now, will that number shatter previous national championship games regardless? Likely, if it's Iowa in it, even if it's Iowa, NC State in the final. But I really think Iowa versus South Carolina, Hutton, is money. So money for the network and money for everyone that's going to be paying attention and watching. That number is going to be huge.
Yeah, and what will the women's Final Four pull for a rating tonight? I don't know. The Friday night tip-off is just odd. I don't know how many fans know. I mean, if you want to watch Caitlin Clark, she's been all the rage. Everyone's been talking about her. So chances are, if you're at the office, it's being discussed. But we even had to look it up earlier this week. And Richard Deitch, in his podcast, he's thinking that the game could hit, if it's South Carolina against Iowa for the championship game could hit 18 million viewers. Deitch thinks 20 million is in play. An undefeated team, and Caitlin Clark is just that level of a draw right now. That's his quote at in The Athletic. What's the number, given the fact that we just saw 12 million? It peaked at, I believe, 16 million in the Elite Eight on a Monday night. 5 days later, does it peak higher than that number on a Friday evening? I'm not sure. If it does, 20 million is definitely in play for the championship game if Caitlin Clark's on the floor. That's what it comes down to. And I'm fascinated by it because we're seeing the final two games of her college career and what that could mean for the WNBA moving forward.
Yeah, 20 million would be huge
for the championship. Oh, it would be massive. That would outdraw the men's championship game probably.
I think,
given the fact it's on TBS,
I think it's going to do better than the 12.5 million. 12.5 million watched Elite Eight LSU versus Iowa. And that was Tuesday night? No, Monday night. Monday night that game happened. So Friday night, I think it's going to take a bit of a hit. But the UConn factor with this also, keep in mind, UConn USC, which was the follow-up game to the game on Monday night, had like 7 million viewers for that game, which was a gigantic number, even without Caitlin Clark in that game. So I'm guessing, if I'm just going to throw out an estimation, I think they get between 14 and 15 million tonight, Hutton, and then I think it's going to be 17 to 20, I'll say, for the national championship game if Iowa's playing for the national title.
Yeah. So the predictions at the Athletic, you just want the viewership predictions, which is crazy that we're seeing this, right? It's like a mock draft.
Yeah.
If the championship game is South Carolina, Iowa, it's predicted that they'll pull 16.9 million. That's what Deitch is saying. Iowa, NC State, 14 million is the prediction. South Carolina, UConn, 10 million, and UConn, NC State, 8 million. So it would still pull the strong number, even if it's UConn, NC State. I don't know about that. I don't see 8 million. Given the fact that, we saw 6 million hit that peak number. Now, it is on ABC. That helps.
It's going to be a big bummer.
That is huge for women's college basketball.
It's huge. It's huge, but I also think that it is, if Caitlin Clark loses, it's going to be kind of a bummer because I think it's going to fall off a cliff.
Me too.
I think from Friday night at late night, right? We're talking 9:30 Eastern time.
And the championship game is Sunday afternoon.
9:30 Eastern time tonight. That game tips.
Yes.
So late night Friday is going to get a gigantic number. And if Iowa loses in that game, and let's say it's UConn, South Carolina, I think it's going to be relative to every other women's national championship game. It's going to be a gigantic number. But relative to the Caitlin Clark effect, it's going to be small. And because of that, it's going to be a bit of a bummer. It's going to be a come down with the ratings. Everyone's on a sugar high right now with the ratings that women's basketball's been getting.
What a moment for women's basketball.
And it's going to go down if she's not in the national championship game.
So Bronny James, he is entering the NBA draft. Now, he's also in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
But the idea that Bronny James and what we haven't seen from him is dipping his toe in the draft to see what could be. Chad, he averages under 5 points per game, under 3 rebounds per game, and averages 19 minutes per game. He's transferring. He's not going to the NBA draft.
If he does, if someone drafts him right now, Hutton, I mean, it is the worst case of Nepo baby syndrome I've ever seen.
The first thing I thought was if he improves and he takes off next season in college basketball, it's more difficult for him to end up with LeBron. If he enters the draft now, who's taking him? LeBron. That's how he could end up on his dad's team before his father retires, hypothetically, because he would be available. I don't see anybody drafting him. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I mean,
except for,
does LeBron have the power to just tell the Lakers, "I want you to draft my son
in the second round"? Sure. I mean,
I'm guessing he does too, but that's odd.
Or he goes undrafted and he just signs.
This is the height of a sport. This isn't AAU ball.
I know.
Like, that's, to me, just insane that an employee, right? I mean, LeBron James is not the owner of the Lakers. He is a Lakers employee, a very highly paid one and powerful one, but that an employee is going to dictate to management, I want you to draft my son who didn't even play 20 minutes per game in college this one year.
Well, again, maybe he just goes undrafted and LeBron makes sure he signs free agent-wise. Again,
wouldn't it be funny if someone just drafted him with the last pick in the draft just to spite LeBron
Celtics.
And the Lakers? Just as hey, this second-round pick's not going to make the team anyways, but we can get the rights to them and take him away from the Lakers? That would be pretty funny. That's a level of petty that Pat McAfee would appreciate. And Norby Williamson also would appreciate that level of petty. A rival that says, I'm going to take LeBron James' son and just bury him in the G League.
Well,
so the Lakers can't have him.
Well, think about
love that move.
LeBron did in this new CBA. LeBron did go and make the pitch for players to have ownership in teams, which you can do now in the NBA
because he wants to own a team in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, he's preparing for it. I mean, he's the billionaire.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes one day. Didn't work out too well for Michael Jordan. The last person, everybody wants to have the GOAT argument. Jordan did it, and it did not work out well.
Except for the cash.
Yeah. I mean, he had the money to do it.
Except for the cash.
Yeah.
But the Vegas storyline is where LeBron's going to end up.
Hutton, I've got a hard time that just in principle.
Yep.
Believing that the Lakers would do this at LeBron's request. It makes me think less of the entire league if LeBron James is able to manipulate Lakers management to drafting his son, who very clearly is not ready to be an NBA player.
He's not.
And that's not me dogging the kid. He had a big life-changing moment happen also in the offseason and lead-up to him playing at USC, right? I mean, he went into cardiac arrest.
Yes.
And he came back from that. So he needs to go to Ohio State or wherever he's considering, become a starter. I mean, let's go step by step here. Let's be a starter for a really good college basketball program. Let's be a solid contributor. Let's average double digits. I'm not asking for 20 points per game. Go and average around double digits for a good college team. Show that, I've heard so much about this kid's three-point stroke. Let's go show that off for someone for 1 year. And then
we've seen highlights in high school.
And then I think everyone would understand, like, okay, the Lakers are going to draft him now at the end of the first round or second round.
Yeah, well,
after a year. But right now, I just think it's a total nepo play.
Well, he's not
by the Lakers if they drafted him.
He's not an NBA draft pick.
No.
But if you go undrafted, that's how you end up. Because, again, if you improve your game to a point where you are an NBA draft pick, you don't really control where you're headed, unless you're pulling the Archie Manning side of things, which, I mean, they could.
Yeah.
They have 2 second-round picks, which is interesting.
Something to keep an eye on. This is a bigger discussion for another day. But I think we need to start keeping an eye on whatever this thing is going on in Australia that Kenny Smith is a part of as a part owner, because we've seen players skip college to go to Australia and play in a pro league that's a really good pro league and make the money there and then come over. So the NBA got rid of the G League Ignite team, which that was it. That instead of one and done, they had one team that was all guys, skipping college
and you'll see a couple
to
of them
go
drafted,
play for a year. But now that is Australia. I think the way they've spun this is they have some sort of ownership stake in the league that's in Australia or this Australian team. I got to do more research on it. We'll talk more about it. But that could be a route for Bronny James, right? Kenny Smith's a part of it. You could go play professional basketball, make money, and not be an NBA player, but go do that for a year or two and then enter the NBA draft. I think we're going to see some college-eligible players doing that. I also think that NIL is going to help keep guys going to college for at least a year. At least a year or two, instead of doing that.
Hey, I should also mention, LeBron, there was discussion. The Warriors tried to trade for LeBron James at the trade deadline. I'm just throwing that out there because it doesn't necessarily have to be the Los Angeles Lakers. Although he did publicly say hopefully he stays with the Lakers and that he likely has no plans to leave. $51 million contract. Is what he has for next season. I'm just throwing out there because the Warriors did try to trade for LeBron James.
Yeah, I wonder with stories like that when they get out. I was actually listening to Bill Simmons talk about this, that it feels like an intentional leak to mess with the Warriors. Like someone's like, hey, they don't think, that you're good enough. They want to trade for your rival and kind of plant seeds of doubt in the Warriors locker room if a story like that gets out. Whether true or not, and because it felt so far-fetched when I first heard that report. But I wonder how often that happens, where you can, even if there's like just a minor discussion between GMs or something like, hey, not even getting serious, but what about this, or what would this look like?
The agent could do it too.
And then if an agent or someone finds out, you leak it, and suddenly it's everyone in that Warriors locker room is thinking, so was I going to be the one shipped to the Lakers to bring in LeBron James? Like that starts to put doubt, especially with the egos in the NBA.
Think about this, though. Bronny James is not a draftable player, but you bring big business with LeBron James, who wants to play for that franchise. If you're the Charlotte Hornets, imagine drafting Bronny James knowing that LeBron wants to play with him. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't have good ticket sales in New Orleans, let's say. Well, hello, LeBron. I mean, it's a fascinating storyline to follow.
I just like
but it's Ohio State, right? I mean, that's the other spot that he actually gave big consideration to prior to USC. Everyone thought he was going to Ohio State anyway.
Yes. He also, I think he visited Tennessee. And Rick Barnes also, because of the Kevin Durant connection. And I know that Tennessee recruited Bronny James. I don't think it got very far. But no, I think it was down to Ohio State. It was like Ohio State, Duke, and USC, I want to say, were the 3 finalists for Bronny James when he ended up staying home and going to USC.
Jed?
I just looked it up, by the way, because you said the Charlotte Hornets, and I was interested. Our old buddy Brandon Miller, who I haven't even thought about since he went pro.
Yep.
He's averaging 17 a game.
Is he really?
As a rookie, yeah. 17 per game with the Hornets. I'm pretty sure the Hornets are awful. I remember just doing a quick NBA standings check at one point. I was like, who are the worst teams?
I haven't bet them. I know
they are 18-58, so they are, in fact, awful. 18-58 on the season.
The A's are also awful. Awful ownership. A fan base that deserves better. Well, the fan base is now going to be a part of, I believe, a 16,000-seat stadium in Sacramento. Congratulations, Oakland A's fans. The John Fisher is the owner of the Oakland A's, and he's now decided that he's going to play, at least for a couple of seasons, his ball club will play at Sutter Health Park. And no joke, the dude actually said in promoting this move that he's looking forward to watching Aaron Judge hit home runs in this park. Who is this guy?
So
what is it? This is trolling to the max, is it not?
Well, let's kind of review the whole plight of the A's here. Like, is the deal to Vegas done?
Yeah, it's done.
Okay, we've seen the mock-up of the stadium and where it's going to be.
They're expected to move to Vegas in 2028.
Yes, but even Vegas, who loves anything like that, right? You're bringing a professional team to them. They were apprehensive about this owner coming down.
Well, you know why?
And being a part of the team, because they could be better get an expansion team and have your own local ownership.
Yes, but like Moneyball doesn't make sense in Las Vegas.
No,
this is an owner that. Okay, Aaron Judge, he makes $294 million more than any contract the A's have ever handed out. That's not Las Vegas to me. You know, that big money, big spender, you want to splash, you want to win immediately. Here's what John Fisher, owner of the A's, said. We're excited to be here for the next 3 years playing in this beautiful ballpark, but also being able to watch some of the best players in baseball, whether they be athletics players or Aaron Judge and others, launch home runs out of this very intimate, the most intimate ballpark in all of Major League Baseball for the next 3 years. I mean, just home run derby is what he wants, and he doesn't care if it's the opponent. Just giving a shout out to Aaron Judge.
It's wild. It's wild to me. And if you are a baseball fan in Vegas, you got to be getting on your hands and knees every night and praying that he just sells the team to some casino mogul who's going to spend. Right? I mean, that's But because now think about the value of that organization once they move to Vegas. To me, the best case scenario for the A's and for baseball and for long-term baseball success in Las Vegas is that guy gets to Vegas, plays 1 year there, and then sells the team when the valuation is through the roof to local Vegas billionaires. And then that billionaire or team of billionaires or whoever it is takes ownership of that team, and they spend. To Hutton's point, you go big. Vegas is a show. You turn that team into a show, and you spend top dollar for players. If you do that, the baseball in Vegas is going to be a lot of fun. If you continue with this A's chintzy ownership strategy with everything, I don't think it's going to work. I mean, it's going to work because people go to Vegas and they might want to go check out a ball game. But when your driving force is, I want to watch Aaron Judge, I want to watch the opposition come in and blast home runs against my team. I don't
blast homers in this very intimate ballpark, which is a little over 14,000 capacity at this minor league park in Sacramento. And, of course, we saw this with the Blue Jays most recently. But he's decided to do this for the next couple of years. They could have extended the lease with the A's for 5 years. He's decided not to do that. That the A's decided not to do that. And their most recent game, they had less than 6,500 fans in the ballpark. I mean, good for the A's fans who are just refusing to go and watch this crap. They decided not to stay in Oakland, not to go to Salt Lake City, stayed in Sacramento because of the local broadcast rights and the money and the revenue they can get from that.
I was talking to someone pretty connected with baseball recently, and I said, all right, next 2 cities for baseball. And I always thought it was going to be, obviously Vegas is going to get their team now, but immediately they said Nashville and Salt Lake. Salt Lake City is going to get an expansion team.
This would have been huge for Salt Lake. Right. I mean, the fans would have been there. I mean, in Sacramento, you're not going to these games, are you?
No. Also, nobody's trying to go to Sacramento. No one's.
No.
That is not a great town. Not a great city. Not a place. Not a destination people are flocking to go do anything in. Much less go watch a terrible Major League Baseball team that's really a AAA team masquerading as a Major League Baseball team that, through no fault of their own. I mean, it's not their fault they're minor league players playing for a major league team that's not making nearly as much money as the rest of the league. But that's where they are now with the A's. It's sad to see. I immediately thought Steve Wynn. I'm like thinking, who's the mogul to buy the team?
David Copperfield.
I put Steve Wynn into the old Google machine, and what turns back out of the Google machine is that in 2023 he spent $10 million to settle a sexual misconduct lawsuit.
Yeah, he's no longer over the win.
He had to sever ties with gambling in the casino He's 81 years old because of that. And I'm thinking, all right, now down the list, let's go find some other real estate owners in Las Vegas that could buy the team.
I think
check him off the list.
He was excommunicated from the state, I believe.
I feel like Rachel Phelps in Major League. This guy's dead when she's going down the list of guys they want to sign. We'll cross him off the list then.
He's got to be really old.
He's 81.
Okay.
He's 81.
Does he look older?
He looks like a frozen corpse. The way he's frozen his face with Botox, like it's disturbing. He looks exactly as you would expect, like Wayne Newton. You saw Wayne Newton in the booth.
Maybe he's the next owner.
Box. Yeah, Wayne Newton would be a terrific
David Copperfield, owner. David Blaine.
David Blaine does a different death-defying act to start every game.
A fastball in his mouth like a bullet. The opening day first pitch.
I will now take our star right fielder, and he will swing as hard as he can through my face to open this ballpark. This is going to be the trick.
We're not going to see DJ Burns play football. Says he has no interest. He said, I quit football whenever I started playing basketball.
Yeah. When you see a guy that big that's not playing football already.
No, yeah, I know.
A lot of times there's a reason for that. They didn't like it, and they're not, as physical maybe as you would want them to be. And they just don't like the sport, so they stop playing it. Because have you seen the mock-up photos of him in a Carolina Panthers, 77 jersey? I've seen ones that have him. Just search it. It's incredible, though. And I look at him like he looks like the starting left tackle for the Carolina Panthers. Just his size. And they put like a 77 on him in a Panthers jersey as the next starting tackle for the Panthers. And it looks like it would work, but alas, DJ's not going to do it.
He looks like a football player.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm hitting images here to see this. Oh,
it's amazing.
You're right.
While you're at it, also let's search for our guy Steve Wynn, so you can see if my description was accurate.
And you said a walking corpse?
A frozen corpse is how I would describe the look of his face.
I would say he looks like a well-done steak.
I don't think he can show facial expression. He's got like a surprised look on his face at all times because his face has been frozen in that spot through Botox and
his chin looks like a potato.
Surgery. He looks like the fake chin that Stevie Janowski got in the last season of Eastbound and Down when he had a chin implant. DJ Burns, no chin implant. He's wearing number 30 also in this mock-up.
Imagine him standing next to Bryce Young.
I love the size of the T-shirt that they have underneath him. Like, that is a giant T-shirt that he's wearing underneath the jersey.
Yeah. Did they just find a fat dude and then just put DJ Burns' face on this player?
Like, who has the biggest exposed belly button? Like the big lineman that you get the big oval belly button showing through the jersey? They had to find one of those players. DJ Burns. What a stud.
He's not backing down from Zach Edey. He's not worried about the player of the year, the two-time player of the year.
He needs to get worried.
Maybe some locker room chatter for Purdue now based on the comments by Burns.
Yeah, for sure. I think that he hasn't had anybody who puts scoring pressure on him as much as I will, for sure. Well, maybe he did, but not under a stage like this.
He's not wrong about that.
John Fanta getting him.
In the John Fanta's everywhere, man. That guy. He's not wrong when he says that. Tennessee certainly didn't have any big man that was trying to score on Edey, and he kind of let him off the hook where he didn't have to foul on defense unless he was pushing off on someone.
Isn't it interesting, though, what Brendan Haywood told us yesterday, just about you're used to being able to back down with the size of DJ. You're used to being able to back down to just have your way, and he's going to run into a tree trunk.
It's different. I think anybody who's ever played a sport knows exactly what Brendan Haywood's talking about. Right? The moment you try to set a screen on someone who's just physically bigger and tougher than you, and they run through your chest, or you can't move someone that you're used to at least moving them a little bit, it's jarring when that happens. And DJ Burns has been able to move everybody.
I know.
That he posts up, and he's not going to move Zach Edey.
Edey's used to being challenged by the big guy on the other team when they have one.
Well, and what was it that Dane Bradshaw was telling us, too, about officiating Edey, and how Brendan Haywood was talking about the posting up and how you're going to get that resistance. You're going to hit the immovable object when you try to move Zach Edey, and he can kind of easily move you. But I remember Dane Bradshaw was saying, well, the part that's difficult about officiating him is if you are, let's say Tobe Awaka for Tennessee, who was clearly fouling him to try to push him out of the lane. Right? You could see the effort on a big, strong guy to try to push him out with his forearm, but you could see the effort to do that. And Dane was like, I mean, is that a foul? Like, if I'm pushing someone as hard as I can to try to get them out of the lane and they're not moving,
and he doesn't move,
do you call a foul on that? And they called a couple of fouls on that, but you could have called it every time because the guy's having to work so hard to either front a guy that size or to just get enough leverage to make sure he's not just standing right beneath the basket and posting you up when he catches the ball.
So what are we going to see for Birds? I can't wait to see this now.
Yeah. I'm still more excited, though, about the women's Final Four games than those.
Like the post-up game on the block?
Part of my excitement is that I will be able to watch the women's games, and I will be coaching in a tournament in Hoover, Alabama during the men's Final Four. So maybe part of my excitement is that I just won't be watching the Final Four games when they happen live.